Hi everyone, I'm Kendall with the Obesity Action Coalition, and on this episode of Fresh Perspectives, I'll be interviewing Nikki Massie on internalized weight bias. Nikki is a member of the OAC National Board of Directors, and she's the co-chair of the membership committee. Nikki is also the task force chair of the Inclusivity and Diversity Task Force. Thank you for joining us today, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
So to start out, can you please define internalized weight bias for our viewers?
Sure. So I know there's probably a lot of official definitions for internalized weight bias, but how I like to think about internalized weight bias is it's that little voice inside of us that has conditioned us and makes us believe that we are less than or not worthy or not good enough because of weight. So that's how I would define it myself.
Thank you. And where would you say that comes from?
Oh gosh, so many places. I think that we're really conditioned to be aware of our weight and our size from a very, very early age, from the toys we play with as children to being placed in weight percentiles at our doctor's office. But and speaking to others, I find that for many people, the very first source of weight bias that most of us experience, and this is again not scientific, just me going off of people that I've spoken to. Most people have told me that their first source of weight bias they've ever experienced has actually been from their family. From things like pinching their cheeks and calling them chubby, or telling them that they need to lose baby weight, or telling them they would be so pretty if they just lost 5, 10, 15 pounds. And all of these things sort of work together to construct our belief about our weight and our size and how weight and size fit into the world. You also see it a lot in the popular media, in the movies. It's, people of size are rarely like sort of the love interest or the person that everybody is pining after. You see them more often as being the butt of the joke, or presented as being sloppy or uncoordinated or clumsy. You see, most often the people who are the popular people, or the people who are desired in things like TV shows, movies, and things like that, tend to be people with more athletic frames and things like that. So just all of those things that come together, everything that you see and everything that you hear sort of constructs your reality about how you think about size and placing yourself and others who look like you into a category in the world. I know this can come, in addition from family, from medical staff, from educators. So really all around you, we're getting messages about how size works and what it means in relation to us as people.
Wow, yeah, it definitely seems like that weight bias definitely adds up. So, when did you first realize that you were experiencing internalized weight bias?
I used to think naively that I didn't have a lot of internalized weight bias because I grew up in a pretty supportive environment myself. My family has a lot of people of size. And so that was sort of my norm in my little bubble of a world. Of course, I was aware. I watched TV, I had a Barbie doll and all of these different things. But within my family unit and within my community, my weight wasn't made that big of a deal of. So I used to think that it didn't affect me. But when I actually started to try to address my weight for my health, and I was very successful. I am a post-gastric bypass patient, lost a lot of weight through, not only the surgery, but, lifestyle modification, watching what I eat, moving more, and things like that. The first time I became very, very overtly aware that I was experiencing internalized weight bias, though, was that point that some bariatric patients get to where you have plateaued and then maybe you gain a couple of pounds. And the stories that I told myself in my head when I gained those couple of pounds were horrible. Because if you think about it, everything that the OAC, promotes, and, science promotes, and even the American Medical Association promotes, is that obesity is a multifactorial disease. And so while my behavior is part of what can affect my weight, it's not the whole thing. And so it's just interesting to me that in those moments where I started to pick up a little bit of weight, the first thing I went to was self-blame. first thing, oh, I must not be doing the right thing, or I ate the wrong thing, or I'm lazy, or I'm a failure. I hear that from a lot of other people who are trying to manage their weight too, as if they have any regain. They automatically think that they are a failure. You are not a failure, by the way. Spoiler alert. But that is when I notice it the most. But then also there are other sort of quieter moments, like when I am in a clothing store and I'm not exactly sure what size I'm supposed to try on because, clothing store sizes, each one seems to have their own sizing rules and things like that, and sort of judging myself based on whatever size I am. Like one store, I may be a size 12, and in another store, I may be a size 16. I didn't change between the 12 and the 16. That was the decision that the store made. But the story that far too often I tell myself is, oh, I'm huge. I have to wear this bigger size of clothing. So just little moments like that. And I try to combat it as best I can. But the big thing I want to say today is that, the first way to combat internalized weight bias is to acknowledge that it's a perfectly natural thing to do. Everybody is judging themselves based on some sort of criteria that is probably unrealistic. So, it's a natural thing to do, but you do have to be aware of it, and you have to sort of stop yourself in your tracks when you go into those thought patterns and sort of really get curious and question, why do I think that? Is this really true? Could there be anything else going on that is contributing to how I'm feeling right now? And really just sort of investigate those feelings. And when you investigate them, sometimes they seem really absurd. Sometimes it's hard to convince yourself that everything isn't your fault, you're not a failure, and all of these things. But sometimes when you start investigating further, when you look into those feelings, you realize how, sort of crazy that thought pattern really is.
Absolutely, Nikki. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story. And I think that is something a lot of our viewers can relate to. And I absolutely do appreciate the reminder that you are not a failure. So thank you for that. And you did explain how you've overcome internalized weight bias. But do you still experience it today?
Oh, yeah. It's an ongoing battle. I think I will, especially because I'm getting older, and we know just as human beings and as a woman, as you get older, you tend to carry weight in certain places. You might pick up weight. It might be harder to lose weight. I realized the other day, actually, when I was talking to a friend of mine about wanting to lose some weight, that I was sort of judging my 46-year-old self based on what, probably my 30 or 25-year-old body could have done. And so that was like, my friend had to remind me maybe that's not a realistic goal for you. Maybe you're setting yourself up to feel like you're failing because you're making, a goal that is maybe not right for where you are with your health, your age, your health history, and all of that good stuff. Which I really appreciated because, honestly, I am not the same person I was when I had gastric bypass surgery 14 years and some change ago. I've gone through a lot of changes, both health wise, lifestyle wise, just in life wise. And so, I find it really, really helpful to pull myself back from the ledge, to really hold myself accountable to others. Like I said, that one friend who I talk through things with. But yes, I absolutely still struggle with that to this day. I try, though, not to say mean things to myself. And I can't remember whether it was at an OAC convention. It probably was, where somebody gave the advice of thinking in things as in terms of either how you would talk to your children or how you would talk to a very dear friend. And if it isn't something that you would say or feel good about saying to, your child or to a very dear friend, you shouldn't be saying it to yourself. And that's hard. But, I try to sort of check myself when I start saying mean things to myself, and I try really not to do it at all. Thoughts can creep in. And, again, trying to acknowledge those thoughts. For me personally, keeping a journal helps because that's my place where nobody else is going to see what I'm thinking or writing. And I can just write it out. And sometimes when I go back and look at it, it's really, really surprising how much internalized weight bias and how much self-judgment I exhibit sometimes. But yes, I do still struggle after all these years.
Thank you again for sharing, Nikki, and I appreciate that bit of advice that you've given our viewers to not speak to yourself as you would your child or a dear friend. I think that's incredible advice that we could all use course. Is there any additional advice that you would give someone that is currently experiencing weight bias today?
Um, I think the biggest thing is that people have this assumption that they're supposed to be able to get over various problems by themselves. I'm supposed to be able to lose weight all by myself. I'm not supposed to think this way. I should be able to get over this by myself. That has never been true for me. I need people. I need people to who I trust, who I can share my thoughts with, and I need people who I trust enough and who care about me enough to tell me when I'm being absolutely ridiculous. So, and I have those people in my life. I'm so thankful. So I think that one of the things that I've heard a lot, in the OAC community especially, is that people feel like they don't have a place where they can come and share their authentic thoughts, to share misconceptions they may have, to gut check information, no pun intended. And while the folks in the OAC community have never told me I'm ridiculous, though I reserve that for my friends and family, it is a good place to go to have people who get it, who are like-minded, who are also working on their weight and health and recognize its importance, and where you're not going to get a bunch of bias and stigma. So if you go there with a thought pattern that might be internalized weight bias, you're probably going to get somebody who's going to respond to you gently, with love, with compassion, but will still tell you that, hey, maybe you should think about this a different way. So I can't recommend that community enough. I'm in there. There's lots of other people in there who are ready to, be supportive, to cheer you on, and, to really sort of question and interrogate that voice inside your head that makes you feel like people are less than because of weight, because it just isn't true. And, it's good to have sort of a tribe to lean on as you sort of relearn those thought patterns that have been built up over so many years.
Thank you, Nikki. That is amazing advice. You're right. The OAC community is there for anyone who needs them. So thanks, Nikki, for joining us today. A very insightful conversation we've had. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.